Bottom line, beneath all the words, whether humorous or pointed, history is a page away, barring something completely improbable. Sonia Sotomayor will be the first Hispanic and the third woman to sit on the highest court in the land. Lou?
Candy, thank you very much. Candy Crowley from Washington joining me now. Three of the country's best political analysts. Ron Christie, former aide to both President George Bush and Vice President Cheney. CNN contributor Errol Louis, columnist, New York Daily News, CNN contributor, Democratic strategist Robert Zimmerman. Thank you all. No surprise that Justice Sotomayor, as I tend to think of her, will be confirmed, right?
I think it's all over but the counting. What's going to be interesting to watch...
The count started at 60, so I don't think there should be any surprise here, right?
Well, I don't take it, being a Democrat, I don't take any vote for granted. But I'll tell you what's interesting, though, watching the number of Republican votes that will be there for her. When you look at how divisive the rhetoric was when she was introduced by the Republicans who run at the mouth, and look at now how the Republicans who run for re-election are handling themselves, I think we're seeing...
You couldn't stop your bad self. You had to be partisan there.
I'm not being partisan.
No way. They run at the mouth.
Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich using inflammatory...
Pat Leahy, you want me to go through the list of Democratic senators as well?
I don't think anyone matched right. No Republican senator
But I'm just saying to you, is why do that? Why do that?
I think it's
You were talking about Republicans coming to vote for her, and the next thing you're insulting Republicans. Ron Christie, Republican.
Well, speaking for the Republicans, Lou, I think what we saw this week was a very dignified process. I think the American people got to hear from Judge Sotomayor, and I think that there were very pointed questions, some very hard questions from the Republicans. But looking at it from my prism from being a Republican, I would only note that Judge, or I should say the nominee, Miguel Estrada, who was nominated to the D.C. Circuit Court here, was filibustered by the Democrats. He was filibustered by Senator Obama and Senator Clinton. I think what you've seen from the Republicans is a very, very tough and a very respectful confirmation. But at the end, I think that she'll receive a number of Republican votes.
Okay, good. Errol, the Frank Ritchie case, the New Haven firefighter discrimination case, it was supposed to be a central line of questioning. It really wasn't, was it?
No, it really wasn't, because in the end, what you'd have to say if you were upset about the way that whole case was handled before it got to the Supreme Court, you'd have to say that Sonia Sotomayor should have taken it upon herself to reinterpret the law and to advance the whole understanding of affirmative action, which is ultimately what the Supreme Court did.
That's actually the inverse of what Senator Kyle and Judge Sotomayor discussed today, and that is that precedent didn't rest necessarily with the Supreme Court, but within the Second Circuit.
Right.
Yes.
So to ask her, how come you didn't change precedent within your circuit? It's a very difficult case to make. I mean, especially if you want somebody who's not an activist.
Well, rather than retrying, I was just going to the politics of the moment. Let's go to the politics of the moment, somewhat more proximate, and that is the president's speech to the NAACP. Your reaction to it, the fact that it took 24 minutes for the president to get to the issue of individual responsibility. Our White House correspondent Suzanne Malveaux says that the president felt he needed to build a case for his own credibility before the NAACP. Your thoughts?
Well, there's certainly an element of that. I mean, this is an organization that's made up of many establishment figures who did not initially support Barack Obama. I mean, one thing he didn't say in the course of it is that, hey, your great work in civil rights made it possible for me to be president. Thank you very much. That's not necessarily an interpretation that he places on their work.
But he could say that to a number of organizations, certainly beyond the NAACP.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, and see, to the extent that, you know, then there's this new biography about him called Renegade. He's a bit of an outsider. Everywhere he goes, he's a bit of an outsider, and that includes the NAACP.
Richard Wolff, the Newsweek senior correspondent, book. We were giving credit where it is due. Robert,
I have to tell you, I thought it was a very inspired speech. Obviously, he did lay out the problems and the obstacles and the history, but he also laid out a path for the future, and I thought that was very important. And it was a great source of pride for the NAACP, obviously, to have him there, but I think every American could take pride in watching that moment.
Yeah, we're told that the NAACP, Ron Christie, wanted to get, was a Yankee Stadium for the appearance, but the White House said, wait a minute, we did that in Denver.
I know. So enough is enough, right? We don't need another column speech. Look, I think President Obama gave a very rousing speech. He was obviously very, very fired up for the moment.
There you go. You did a Robert Zimmerman from the right. Why can't you all get along? Why can't you people get along?
That's why we're here with you, Lou, to bring us together.
I'm saying, actually, I thought he gave a rousing speech.
Good.
But I will say this. The one thing I didn't like about the speech, and you noted it in your previous segment, it almost made it seem like this speech could have been given 40 years ago, and that there has not been significant progress in the African-American community. I mean, we have overcome so much as a people, we have overcome so much as a race, that I think that now there are millions of African-Americans now who have hope, who have the dream, who have the aspiration, and I wish the president had noted that in his speech tonight.
There is something of an overwhelming irony about the first African-American president standing before the NAACP talking about obstacles. We commiserate, we even empathize and understand what he was saying, but that irony nonetheless quite evident. We'll continue with our panel here in just a moment. The political theater of the Sotomayor confirmation hearings has concluded. Now distractions from things like cap and trade, health care reform, energy policy, a host of other issues. Now, Robert Zimmerman, we're going to see what happens. The director of the Congressional Budget Office today absolutely corrected the President of the United States, saying the health care legislation as proposed by the Democrats in the House will in fact cost more, not less.
And under further scrutiny, when he appeared before a House committee on this issue, he did acknowledge projecting 10 years down the road, when he said it would cost more, not less, is very hard to do. And also, he didn't take into account the other committee proposals that are coming out that address the issue of curbing Medicare and Medicaid costs.
You are kidding me here, aren't you?
I'm on the level with you.
Well, I
think it's premature to dismiss this bill.
No, I'm not dismissing the bill. I'm quoting the director of the Congressional Budget Office without, bringing in a host of other issues. But when you bring in Medicare and Medicaid, as you just did, it's important to note, as the Pacific Research Institute did, that Medicare, in fact, has a 35% higher cost than the other programs in this country. And yet we're talking about, Errol Louis, making this a government program. These are difficult headwinds, are they not?
Well, I don't know if it's about making it a program. It's about, and this is where I think the underlying the debate is it going to be an entitlement? Is this going to be something we do for citizens because they're citizens, or is it something we'll do if we can afford it and otherwise we won't?
Errol, we're doing it because it's about jobs, it's about economic recovery, it's about the fact that right now it's costing us more as citizens if we don't make changes. That's why we're doing it.
Surely you gentlemen can agree about why it's being done. Ron Christie, do you want to get in here?
Please let me. I know why it's being done, because this is a payoff back to the Democratic constituency. This has nothing to do with health care reform.
If you look
at what the director of the Congressional Budget Office said today, it will cost more. It will not achieve the savings that the president and the Democrats are promising.
So it's just a patronage program?
And I might point out that you're talking about that it'll only cover 37 million people. If the United States Congress was going to be serious about reforming health care costs, you have 49% of the people in this country who have chronic disease, 75 cents out of every health care dollar spent on chronic disease, and yet
Ron,
we're
you got to
doing
read the second page of his testimony, however, when he does talk about...
You know what? We're going to all do that, and you know what? You're going to report back to us at your earliest convenience what that second page says.
Yes,
and Ron Christie, I hope you will be listening dutifully. Thank you so much, Errol Louis, and you can arbitrate. We thank you very much, and Robert Zimmerman. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.